406.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 411 from 406. My name is Chewie, and I am joined, thankfully, once again, by my brother from another mother, Mr. Pip. How are you, sir?
I'm doing so well, but I got a question for you. Has it
Yes.
been a little while since we talked? Because I feel like this is how we start all our podcasts, right? And clearly, in this case, yet again, it has
Yeah.
been a few minutes since we've done this.
It has. So this is going to be, we are marching towards, this is going to be episode number 98. So we're getting there. I know we've been like we've been talking about this for what seems like years. We recorded episode number 97 on January 30th.
Ugh.
So we're sitting here on March 20th.
Ugh.
So yeah, that's a long time. So yes, it has been a little while.
So we got some stuff to catch up on, it sounds like.
We do.
I haven't even talked to you on the podcast specifically since the Royal Rumble.
Yes.
Since I mean, I don't want to get too heavy into the wrestling stuff for reasons that maybe we can divulge here while we're on this podcast. But we got some stuff to catch up on. What do we want to talk about before we get into? Which, by the way, I'm very excited. We got a topic tonight. We're not just we're not just sitting here shooting the shit like we usually do. We've got something that we actually want to talk about. But I digress. Before we get there, what's going on with you?
So things are good. I got through basketball season with Grayson. So Grayson is done with basketball, which was sad, but he had a at the end of the day, had a good season. He was the team captain, which was really super cool for us. And then we're going now right into baseball season. Baseball starts next Wednesday, 4 games a week for the next umpteen number of weeks. So,
Jesus Christ.
And I'm going to get to see you next week, which is fucking awesome.
Woo! Yeah, I'm very excited about that. Yeah, I'm going to travel up there for work next week. And it's what's funny, and I don't think I mentioned this to you, but I'm reasonably sure nobody from work listens to, so I can out myself here. But I was planning on, so I've got some new people reporting to me now, and I am coordinating this little miniature symposium thing for the managers. And I was going to do it in Columbus. And I thought, well, that's a nice equidistant location for us to meet because it's myself, one manager from Columbus, one manager from Cleveland, and a manager from Pittsburgh. And that just kind of made perfect sense as a spot. I'm like, but I could do it in Cleveland. It would be more convenient for everybody else, but it would be significantly less convenient for me from a drive perspective.
Yes.
But I get to see Chewie if I go up there, and that pretty much sealed the deal. So, yeah, I'm coming up next week. I'm going to be there on Tuesday evening. Should be there all day Wednesday, all day Thursday, and then head back on Friday. So,
that's awesome.
I thought for a brief second, man, I should see if he's busy that weekend, and maybe I could just stay the weekend and hang out. And I thought, that might be pushing it. It's, if I were a single man like I used to be, that would be a little bit of an easier arrangement to make, but with the wife and her current work situation, it's a little bit tough to stretch that right now. So I'll take a few drinks on a Thursday night, or a few more drinks on a Thursday night, and we'll get caught up properly. So I'm very excited about that.
Yes. Yeah. I can't wait. So, yeah. So crew actually has his first game Wednesday. He's got a game Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And we looked it up on the map. You're staying like 11 minutes from his school. And then we can kind of you're actually closer to his school than you are to my house where you're staying. But you're either way, you're super close. So I'm pumped. Perfect. I can't wait to get together and swap stories and a couple beers and plan out the next couple months of the podcast, right?
Yes, exactly. So well, why don't you tell the good people what we have planned, what's brewing right now? I'm not sure anybody's going to give a shit, but it's kind of a good news, better news situation,
It is.
And so why don't you tell them?
Yeah, so yes, it's a good, yeah, it's a good news, better news, and especially like if you listen to this podcast and you tune in for the pop culture stuff and the 240 something year old guys bullshitting and the the movie and the video games and those kind of things, but you don't really like the wrestling stuff, this is a really cool good announcement for you because we are going to create a whole brand new podcast specifically focusing on professional wrestling, and I can't fucking wait. It's gonna be awesome.
It is going to be awesome, and obviously we spend a good 45 minutes easy on the 411 from 406 podcast talking about any given wrestling event going on, and usually what we're talking about is just like current event stuff. And the one of the many reasons I love doing this podcast is we can strip it out of the 406 one. So, like to your point, anybody who doesn't want to hear that, they don't have to listen to that anymore. But now we get to expand on our topics. We can talk about what's going on currently. We can fan book, what's going on now. We can have more top five discussions, Mount Rushmore type stuff. We could say, what would it be like if Hulk Hogan wrestled Seth Rollins? Or, we could have like fun conversations around all different aspects of the business, video games, movies, all the stuff. And I'm very excited about that. I probably don't need to be taking on another podcast, but at the same time, there's just nothing that brings me more joy right now. I could say that because my kids don't listen. Than just talking about the shit that I love, and
Yes,
you and I have a lot of those things in common, and it just made sense to try to make this happen. So I'm in where it's in production right now to get the theme song kind of up and running. We're workshopping a title. We think we have one that we like, but we're making sure that it's a good one to use. And you've already done some AI work with the logo and all that, which I loved. I thought it was fucking fantastic. So yeah, I mean, this is going to be one of those things. It's going to be too easy, right? Like it's just
I
going to
think
be
so.
easy.
Yeah,
It's going to come together really smoothly. This podcast is going to be harder because once you strip out the wrestling, we got to
right.
actually think about
Yeah,
what the fuck we want to talk about,
yeah.
right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
very excited.
yeah, so Larry, Dad, this way you can continue to listen to this podcast, and then you don't need to listen to us ramble about wrestling stuff over because we'll keep that over on the other show. Um, that being said, so again, moving forward, wrestling chat is going to be on the other podcast. We have to talk just briefly, and we can delve into it maybe even on the first episode of the wrestling podcast. We had a seismic event that happened in wrestling recently that I don't think we've really even talked about. John Cena turned heel. And I want your thoughts, but I think they did a great job with it. I don't think we've even talked about it other than to say it happened. What were your thoughts? What did you like? Was your jaw on the ground? Like what? Tell me about the John Cena heel turn.
Yeah, I definitely want to save the meat of this conversation for
Okay,
maybe our
that's
first
fine.
episode, but I will start off by saying I thought it was great. I loved it. I loved the idea. It's been 25 years since he's been a heel or something along those lines. And I remember watching, the Elimination Chamber and that moment where his face just kind of goes, he loses that smile and everything goes serious and the heel turn happens. And I thought it was really good. I was very impressed. I mean, I was watching live with my daughter, who is a big wrestling fan, my youngest, and she was just like, "Wait a minute, why did he do that? What just happened?" And I'm losing my shit. I'm like, "Oh my God, do you realize what just happened?" And she's like, "No, I have no idea." And so I had to explain it to her. I'm like, "This is a huge
Yeah,
deal." And this makes the WrestleMania main event so much more palatable in my mind because babyface John Cena versus babyface Cody Rhodes would have been good, would have been
yeah,
fun, would have been something to talk about. But now it's interesting. Now having John Cena as the heel is a really good way if they want to get him that 17th title. This is the way to do it, right? This is a
yeah,
good way to move him into that story without everybody getting pissed at him. Because if he came in as a good guy and it looked like Triple H just pushed him into that match in order to get him the title, and then we're going to say goodbye and blah, 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 it looks like they're putting some genuine effort into it. And
Yeah.
that's maybe what I was the most afraid of when John Cena sort of announced he was coming back and doing this final year tour. I was afraid it could be phoned in. Not because John Cena does that, but because historically we've seen that happen a lot. We've been
Yeah.
disappointed by those kind of things. And I should have had more faith in the system for them not to treat him like that and not to treat us like that in the Triple H era. So yeah, I'm very excited. I saw his first promo after, that just happened this past Monday night in Brussels, and it was good. People are really dying over it. I don't know if it was that good. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around it. I think it's going to. I listened to another wrestling podcast, and the point was made that I thought was really, really good. It's like it's hard to understand how good this is really going to be until more time has passed because
Yeah.
we just don't know yet. That we have to let the story be told before we can really judge it. But I tell you what, they keep around every turn. They keep surprising me, and that's the only thing I could ask for. And so far, I love it. But what do you think?
I agree. And again, I also agree with your sentiment that we should probably hold the larger discussion for the next podcast. But yes, this is something that I've been personally wanting for a long time. I've been a John Cena fan since day one. Even when like it wasn't cool to like him. Like in fact, I went back through my blog, and there were 3 or 4 times that I'd written articles around, hey, it's now would be the perfect time for a Cena heel turn. Now would be the time. Now would, and I was always wrong. And so I won't say that I saw this coming because I really didn't. Um, Going back now and looking at some of the like hints that they dropped, it was actually done really, really well.
Sure.
And like some of the things with The Rock that at the time didn't make a damn bit of sense make perfect sense now. And I think it just goes to show, and you already mentioned it, how good things are in this quote unquote Triple H era. Somebody on Twitter the other day asked the question, like, how much do you miss Vince? And I responded, I was like, I don't miss Vince at all. Vince was an icon. He was amazing what he did for the business, but I don't miss him at all. I think the product is infinitely better now that Vince is gone, at least
Yeah.
in um, okay, we can keep more wrestling talk
Sure.
for the next podcast. But I'm glad that it sounds like you were just as excited and overwhelmed as I was with that heel turn for sure.
Yeah, and I will share one more brief wrestling
Yeah.
story just because I did want to cover it on here. Is my journey to the Royal Rumble with my daughter, which
Yes.
was super duper fun. Since I don't think we talked about that since, or you and I have, but I haven't talked about it on the podcast. But again, my daughter, she's 8 years old. She has become a giant, and when I say giant, I mean she is a fucking giant wrestling fan. She's got her replica championship belt. I mean, she watches it constantly on YouTube. She knows who the wrestlers are the minute their theme songs hit. Like, it's scary how much more she knows about wrestling than I do, especially the women's division. So, as our listeners know, I believe we went to the Royal Rumble this year because it was held in Indianapolis. And this was back at what was it, like the beginning of February, like the first day of February, the last day of January, one or the other.
Something like that. Yeah.
And so I got tickets to the show, and I waited kind of till the last second because tickets are really expensive. The one downside for WWE becoming such a huge product these days is the ticket prices to go to these shows are insane. And then of course John Cena had announced this was his last Royal Rumble ever. So it was like, wow, what a great opportunity for us to be able to say we got to see that very last one in person. So I took her to that, but as part of that, I got her a meet and greet with her favorite wrestler of all time, Rhea Ripley, who was at the time no longer the women's world champion. And I mean, she opened this present on Christmas. She cried. She was so excited. She just couldn't wrap her mind around what this was going to be. So we go to the convention center where they had this meet and greet set up on the Friday before the Royal Rumble, which was on Saturday. And we went there and we walked in, and there's just like there are so many people there. They've got this WWE store set up similar to the one that we saw at Tower City for SummerSlam. And there was a bunch of people there. We saw Big E sitting down with Rey Mysterio doing a podcast off to the side, which is really cool. And then we got in this really long line and waited for about 30, 45 minutes until they started shuffling us through. And before we knew it, we were right in front of Rhea Ripley, and there she was. And Olive had made this bracelet that said "Dumbass Dom" on it. And like the bracelet with the individual letters and all that stuff. And she made it and it said "Dumbass Dom." And she gave it to Rhea Ripley when we walked up there, and she laughed really hard, and she showed all her people that were up there. And Olive had like the black makeup on and the lipstick and the eyeliner, and she had a Rhea Ripley shirt on that she made, and she was just so excited. And I have to say, Rhea couldn't have been kinder. I mean, of course, we didn't get much more than 30 seconds with her. It was there were a lot of people, and it was a lot of shuffling around.
Yeah.
But she was so nice, and we thanked her for everything, and we got the best picture of the three of us together. And it was just one of the coolest moments. And I swear to God, Olive did not sleep for 3 days. She was just so excited. That picture's hanging in her room right now, and she was on cloud nine. So that was super fun. Then, of course, we went to the Royal Rumble. Well, actually, no, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. So I will also say that as I was leaving, I realized leaving the convention center, there was another wrestling convention directly across the street called WrestleCon. It's not uncommon for wrestling conventions for people who are not tied directly to the WWE anymore, or maybe they were, but they're not anymore, or wrestlers from other companies will join these conventions that follow the big WWE events around, because obviously you're going to find more wrestling fans within walking distance to just kind of wander in, which is exactly what I ended up doing. So I walked into the lobby of this hotel. And I'm like, because I looked on my phone and I'm looking at all these people, and I'm like, ooh, there's some people here that I know. I'd like to go over there and just kind of check it out. And so we went over there, and right in the lobby getting a Starbucks coffee is Teddy Long, who's one of the old managers in wrestling. And I looked at him. I said, "Hey, Mr. Long, how are you, sir?" And he fist bumps me and he's like, "How you doing, playa?" And I'm like,
Hey,
"Oh my
playa.
God." I lost my mind. Like that was just, for those of you who don't know wrestling, that's kind of his like catchphrase. He always calls everybody playa. And I'm like, "Oh my God, he called me playa. That was so cool." And then I see Buff Bagwell going up the escalator, and then I see Ric Flair walk by, and I'm just like,
Wow.
"Holy shit, this is epic." And Ric Flair was kind of like the lead guy, the lead guest there.
Okay.
But I'm walking around, and they're sitting the Honky Tonk Man, and they're sitting Brutus the fucking Barber Beefcake, and there sits like all of these wrestlers from our youth. Ted DiBiase was there, which I was enamored by him. Joe Hendry was there, which he's not a legend, but he ended up being in the Royal Rumble the next day.
Made an appearance. Yeah.
And lo and behold, my favorite wrestler of all time was sitting there, and it was Jake the Snake Roberts. And I'm like, I got to do it. I just got to do it. My daughter just met her favorite wrestler, so I'm going to meet mine. So I walk up, and I walk up to Jake, and I said, "Hey, my name is Matt. I just want to let you know you're one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I appreciate you. Thank you for everything that you do." And I said, "I'd love to get a autograph and a picture." And he's like, "Okay." And of course, these things cost money, and they're not cheap. So he's like, I'll go ahead and out myself. It was like $100. He's like, "It's going to be $100 for a photo with me and a signed picture and an autograph." And I said, "Okay." And so he gets this picture out and he starts signing it. And he's like, "It's cash only, right?" I'm like, no.
No.
So Jake the Snake doesn't take PayPal. Okay, cool. So I feel really embarrassed immediately because I don't really carry cash on me, certainly not $100. And I said, give me a second. I'll go find an ATM machine. I will be back. So I walk around. It takes me like 20 minutes to find it, and then the ATM's slow as shit, and it takes me like 10 minutes to get the money. So it takes me like a half an hour before I get back to him. And I do, and I say, "Hey, I've got some cash now. I'm really sorry about that." And he's like, "Yeah, no problem." And he was nice, but Jake's pretty old, and yeah, his health is pretty shaky these days. So he wasn't super talkative, but I asked him how he was feeling, and he said he was doing good, and that was great. So I get a picture taken with him. So it's me and Olive and Jake, and it just, I'm on top of the world. I thought it was the coolest thing. He stuck his ring up into the picture so you could see his Hall of Fame ring, which is really cool. And then I walk away. And I neglected to mention he's sitting right next to Cheryl Roberts, who wrestling fans will recognize as his wife. I think maybe they're still married. I don't know that for a fact, but like they travel
Yeah.
together, and she's still Cheryl Roberts as far as anybody knows. So I walk away, and I left my fucking picture on the table. I was just
Oh
so on
no.
fire. I walked away, and then like 5 minutes later, I'm almost off the floor that this whole thing's on. I'm like, oh shit, I forgot the picture. So I take all of them and we're running back. And I get back to the table. I'm like, I'm really sorry. I'm not like I'm clearly I'm a mess today. I just had this picture signed and now it's gone. And they're like, "Oh yeah, Cheryl went looking for you. She has it in her hand." And so like she took it upon herself to like walk around the entire convention floor trying to find me because I left the picture there like a complete idiot. And then finally I bump into her and I just give her a hug and I say, "Thank you so much. Like you didn't have to do that." She was so nice and so kind and so sweet. So I wanted to give her a shout out. But that coupled with the Rhea Ripley experience was just it was so much fun. It was so great. Olive loved it. She didn't get the Jake the Snake part as much, but like I met my favorite wrestler, and I'm like, yeah, so did I, and it was a cool little bonding moment. And then of course the Royal Rumble was on Saturday, super fun. I don't know if I'd go back to an event that big again for a ring that small, watching the whole thing on a screen. I mean, I would go for a WrestleMania, but I don't know that I would you know,
Yeah.
the smaller house shows are probably more fun, more intimate. So, but overall, it was great. So I just wanted to share with those who do listen, who knew that that was going to happen, that I had a great time.
That's that's awesome. I'm glad that you had such a good experience. Um, so if my memory is correct, Cheryl Roberts was the one that Ravishing Rick Rude kissed in the audience, right? And she was like, "My
Correct.
husband is a professional." Okay, that's the one.
She's
Okay,
that one. She's also the one that had her face airbrushed on Rick Rude's crotch when he
that's
had his
right.
remember when he had his tights
Okay,
done, and that's what he that
yes,
was the storyline where he really pissed off Jake because he pulled down his pants and he had those pants underneath them and he would do his little hip shake thing and Jake would get pissed and try to
that's
fight him
right.
and all that stuff. So yeah, that's the same Cheryl Roberts, which is really
That's
interesting.
really cool.
Yeah,
That's
so
really cool.
fun story. It was great.
That's awesome. Let's see. We do have a topic. One more thing
Yes.
before we get into it. So
Okay.
March Madness is upon us. Unfortunately, our Hoosiers aren't there. But we have a new coach. What are your thoughts on the new Indiana Hoosier basketball coach?
Yeah, so Darian DeVries or DeVries, I don't
Yes.
I don't even know how to pronounce his name correctly, so
Yeah.
that should tell you what I know about him, which is
Yeah.
virtually nothing other than he came from West Virginia. I really honestly don't know. I was very, very much ready for a coaching change at the end of this year because I just didn't have a lot of faith in Mike Woodson to get the right people and do the right coaching. No disrespect. I just didn't feel like it was a good fit anymore, and he kind of wore out his welcome there. So I think the move was extremely smart. I don't know anything about this guy. I really truly don't. The thing that's really kind of carrying me through and giving me hope is that the same guy that hired Kurt Signetti is the same guy that hires this new basketball coach. So I'm going to hope that they know talent when they see it and that this is going to usher in a new era. I don't know if he's the one that I wanted. Also, I don't follow college basketball close enough to know all the names and have all the pedigrees and resumes of all these other coaches. So that's fine. Come on in, bring some enthusiasm. More importantly, bring some players and bring some fundamentals
Yeah.
back to the game because this Indiana team this year was one of the worst shooting teams I've ever seen, and that just doesn't jive with what I believe to be
Yeah.
Indiana basketball. That's not our culture. We should be shooters all through and through, and we weren't that, and that was disappointing.
Okay.
So
Yeah. It's funny. I'm almost exactly in the same camp. I didn't necessarily know this guy other than, he came from West Virginia, and I think their program has been pretty. I mean, they were a 19 win or 20 win team for
yeah,
the last couple of years.
he's been a winner. He's had
All,
success,
yeah,
just like Signetti. Like the
yeah,
different programs that he's been attached to, he has won. So we'll see.
yeah. And I will say that the overwhelming majority of the press that I've seen has been really positive. Like, oh, it's a great hire. It's a good fit, blah, blah, blah. So
The
I guess I will
the
say
only
I'm
person who was
cautiously optimistic.
the only person that I know of that was pissed about it was Pat McAfee, because Pat
Oh, is that right? I
McAfee,
didn't see that.
well, he's an alumni of West Virginia, so I think
Oh,
he feels
okay.
like we stole the coach. So I think it was
Okay.
all in fun, but yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. Fingers crossed, man. I'll be excited to see what we do. We did lose a couple key players in the transfer portal, which is never great, but also, we'll figure it out, I think.
Yeah.
The coach has got a
Do you,
son who will most certainly come along with him, who's maybe only got a year left, but is supposed to be really good. So maybe
okay.
that'll help us limp through his first year until we can get some good commits at that point.
Okay. Did you fill out a bracket? Do you have any thoughts on who might win this particular championship?
No, I didn't fill out a
No.
bracket. I've kind of
Yeah.
sworn off that just because I feel like I suck at it and it's just
Yeah.
frustrating. And we don't have a lot of organized stuff like that through work, unfortunately. So there's
Okay.
not really nobody knocked on my door and said, "Hey, do you want to fill out a bracket?" So I just didn't.
Yeah.
What about you?
We we filled one out just literally just with our family. So the five of us, and I filled it out in probably 3.5 minutes. I mean, it was so yeah.
Yeah.
I did go last week, 2 weeks ago. Grayson and Scott and Scott's son went to the MAC quarterfinals
Oh
that was
yeah.
here in Cleveland,
How was it?
and it was great. So when you go to that quarterfinal session, you get four basketball games. So we went down there at 11 o'clock, sat right on the court and watched four basketball. It was great, and we got to see some really good games. Akron ended up winning the tournament on. We went down on Thursday. They ended up winning on Saturday evening. And again, when you're sitting that close, right, it's like you have the literally the best seat in the house. So it was pretty cool. It's an awesome experience.
Nice.
And then actually today and tomorrow, Cleveland is hosting the opening rounds of the NCAA tournament as well. So,
Very cool.
which I didn't even realize until like yesterday that they were coming down. So, okay, we've rambled long enough. It's time. We have a topic tonight, which is cool, and it's one of our 6 through 10s, which I really enjoy the 6 through 10s. I'll
Same.
turn it over to you to kind of to introduce what we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, so I kind of had a hankering to do a 6 through 10 because it's been quite a while since we've done one of those. And so the fun part about a 6 through 10 is in itself, it's a sequel, right? So it's a podcast sequel. So we have to, use it as an opportunity to follow a previous discussion. So I went back through the archives and thought, well, what haven't we done a 6 through 10 with? And the one that came to mind that I thought had some legs to it was our top, well, our 6 through 10 favorite action movies. And, this was, I don't know your experience with putting this together. And I do think we should go through what our top five were as reminders. So obviously people don't say, well, what happened to Die Hard? Why wouldn't you put that on
Yeah.
this list, right? Um, I think this was a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be because I don't know. I mean, I don't actively watch a lot of modern day action movies. There's probably a few that I've seen, but I don't revisit the older ones a whole lot, and I don't stay in touch with the new ones. Although there's a new one out in the theaters called Novocaine that I really want to see with Dennis
Looks
Quaid's
great.
son. It's
It
gotten
looks
really
great. Yeah.
super good reviews, so I do want to see that. But yeah, so I thought that'd be a fun topic to cover, and you obliged as you usually do, which I appreciate. So I put together a list. I did bring an honorable mention. We can do whatever with those, but I don't know how I'm going to feel about the list by the time I listen back to the podcast because
Okay.
but that's a good thing because that's what makes the 6 through 10 stuff so interesting because top five's easy. 6 through 10 is a totally different ball game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited.
So yes, I agree with everything you said. Just to go real quick on our top fives from way back in episode 42 of the podcast,
Over
which
50
was
episodes ago.
yes, which ironically enough was recorded almost 5 years to the day, 4 years
Wow.
ago to the day. It was recorded on March 11th, 2021. We recorded that podcast. So
I can't believe we've done it
um,
that long. That's
I know.
crazy.
Yeah. So my top five, and I don't remember the order, but my top five were The Rock, Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Matrix, Dark Knight, and Die Hard. And your top five were Die Hard, Kill Bill Volume 1, The Matrix, RoboCop, and Terminator 2. And so we had at least, let's see, we had two overlaps in that particular top five. Um, this one is going to be interesting. I don't know. Let me take a look here.
I think it's possible
We
we don't have any overlaps tonight.
we may not. We really may not. There might be one. I got a couple outliers here. So
Okay.
yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. We might get one.
I will say there's an era, there's a bit of a theme to the era of movies that I chose. Not every one of them, but there's with a couple
Okay.
of them, they all fit into a little pocket of time that I think it was really great to see action movies.
Okay. I
So,
like that. I like that quite a bit actually. Let me take a
and
look here. I'm
I've
yes.
got a little bit of a twist on this for you.
Oh boy.
So
Okay.
what I'm gonna do here is I with the help of artificial intelligence, I had it write me spoiler-free plot summaries of each one of these. I'm gonna read you the plot summary and see if you can guess what they are. That's how I'm going to
Oh,
introduce each one of my movies. And I don't think any of these are gonna be really that hard because it doesn't use character names, but it uses some pretty you know,
okay.
pretty obvious giveaways. So I think you'll
That's
get
really
that,
cool.
but I think it could be fun for the listeners as well. So that's how
Okay.
I'm going to do this.
And the only thing that I will say about my list is with I will say 4 out of 5 of my movies are from the 80s.
Oh
So
wow. No, I you know what? I am willing to bet we don't have any overlap then because well, we
okay.
may have one. I only have one 80s movie on my list. How's
Okay. I got
that?
four I got 4 out of 5.
That's fucking
So
crazy.
yeah.
Okay. All right, let's do
So
this.
okay, let's do it. Let's see. Would you like to go first or would you like me to go first? I will leave it up to you.
How about I will go first so that you can
Okay.
finish this off.
Okay.
All right,
All
so
right.
I'm going to start by reading my plot summary, and
Okay.
you need to guess what this is. All right,
Okay.
and
So this is your number 10.
this is my number 10.
Okay.
Here's the plot. Again, these are not going to be hard. In a future where memories can be artificially implanted, a construction worker dissatisfied with his mundane life decides to experience a virtual vacation as a secret agent on Mars. That's pretty obvious. However, when the procedure goes wrong, he begins to question his reality, unsure if his life, as he knows it, is real or a fabricated memory. As he uncovers a conspiracy with global stakes, he must confront his true identity and fight to survive.
That is a tremendous movie called Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I love that movie.
Absolutely. 1990. This is the second time director Paul Verhoeven has ended up on my list, as RoboCop was in my top five. This obviously stars Arnold Schwarzenegger alongside Sharon Stone, Michael Ironside, and Ronnie Cox, who are also RoboCop fame. Um, as far as just some general stats, I mean, it did make $261 million dollars on a budget of about 65 million. So not a, I mean, successful movie, not a blockbuster crazy one, but this was really, from a timing perspective, this to me was really Schwarzenegger at his prime, I thought, because he was doing The Running Man, he did Total Recall. Terminator 2 was gonna come out in about a year or two, I think. And I just love this movie. I really am a sucker for a good sci-fi movie that is not necessarily sci-fi in the sense of spaceships flying around and lightsabers and all that stuff, but more so in the creative storytelling aspect of like you find yourself in this situation and most things are normal, but there's this other thing that's just it totally changes the at the vibe or the I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it changes the narrative of the story. I'll use the show Severance as an example. It's really great. Like if you've seen the show Severance, it's on Apple TV. It's a phenomenal show. I've only seen the first season, not the second season, but it's very much rooted in and all the rules are rooted in reality, but there's something that's very sci-fi about what's going on in that show. And I love that aspect of it. It doesn't have to be spaceships and aliens to be sci-fi for me. And I think one of the interesting things about this movie is that if you think about where we are today with technology and things like that, I don't think we're really far off from this kind of thing being a reality. To have a memory implanted into your brain, and what are the moral implications behind that? I think it means even more today than maybe it did back in the early 90s. And back then it was just kind of a fun story. But now, I mean, it really has, I can't say it has real life ramifications because it's not a real life thing yet, but it's probably much closer now than it ever has been. And I think it's a really interesting discussion. Like, would you do something like this if this were available and we knew that it wasn't going to be an immediate health risk of some kind? Like, obviously, like, let's pretend that there was no risk of dying. Would you do something like this? Would you implant a memory in your brain knowing that it is that invasive and that intrusive? I thought the whole concept was really cool. And yeah, a lot of the special effects are dated and some of it's really cheesy, but I loved it. I thought it was a great movie, and I think it's good at this number 10 spot for my list.
It's a great flick. One of my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. Um, Sharon Stone is at her peak hotness in this movie. Basic Instinct aside,
I was going to
okay.
say
Uh,
she's going to get a little bit hotter in about a year or
right,
two.
you know, but no, but you're right, and this was one of those movies that is a quote unquote sci-fi movie, but to your point, is like believable, right? It's not so out there that, I mean, even back then in the 90s when it came out, you're like, oh yeah, I could kind of see how that would, it wasn't so much of a stretch where you're like, oh, that could never happen. They rebooted this what, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. It wasn't great. I didn't really care for it at all. But I think it was because that it just paled in comparison to this version of the story.
Yeah.
Was a great flick. Holds up really well. I actually watched this probably a year ago,
Yeah,
and it
same.
holds up really, yeah, it holds up really well. You mentioned in your intro, or you mentioned Michael Ironsides, and it got me to think, did you see they are rebooting Starship Troopers?
Doesn't
Did you see
surprise me.
that?
No, I
It
didn't,
doesn't.
but it
I
doesn't
saw there
surprise me.
there was three or four like sequel slash reboots that I saw just this week that I was like, oh my goodness, like there was another Young Guns 3 I saw.
Well,
That
they have been talking
Yep.
about that. I don't know if they're going to do it, but maybe. Who knows?
Here's the problem, not to get on onto a tangent. So many of these stories and even trailers you see with AI, you can't believe it because it's like, I don't know if it's fan made, if it's fiction, if it's this, that,
Yeah.
and the other thing. The story that I read about Young Guns looked like it was happening. And it's got to be a flashback because it's got like, it had some of the names that were dead attached to it. So,
Oh, really?
anyways, yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So,
Okay.
that's
Well,
it. Okay, that's a good way. I don't have the AI.
I know. I
Um,
cheated. It was
yeah,
not
no,
fair.
that's fine. No, I like that. That's really cool. So my number 10, I mentioned I've got four films that are in the 80s. This is the one that is not. So this is by far the most recent film on my list. This is a 2014 film directed by a guy named Chad Stileski, who I didn't even hear that name until today when I was looking it up. Stars Keanu Reeves. It is John Wick.
Mhm.
John Wick, the entire John Wick franchise to me is just, it is kind of pure action. And then when you couple that with the fact that it's actually a really good story once you kind of get into it and really understand kind of the mythos that is John Wick. A lot of that is not really explored until after this first movie. This first movie is purely a revenge film. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, John Wick is a professional hitman. He's kind of deep into this world that has like these kind of crazy rules about respect and payment and this, that, and the other thing. He gets out, his wife dies. and this other gangster basically kills his dog, and he just goes on to fuck everybody up, basically in revenge for killing his dog. And that's really kind of the plot, but it is so much more than that. I have the utmost respect for Keanu Reeves as a actor, but what he does from a physical perspective and like a tactical military perspective, like he actually trained tactical shooting range and all that kind of stuff to do most of the things that you see him do. Um, the thing that I really love about the John Wick movies is it's reality based, right? It's not like the Matrix. It is I say it's reality based. He'll shoot people in the head, like to make sure that they're dead. Like it's not just a body shot and he keeps on going. They play fast and loose with the body armor aspect, where he's got this, basically a sport coat that will block all bullets. Okay, that's not really real. But I love the John Wick franchise, and I think that the original is my favorite. So number 10, John Wick.
Oh, fantastic pick. It's been a while since I've seen, well, been a long while since I've seen the first one. I don't think I ever saw the fourth one, but I've seen the others. And it's hard for me to argue Keanu Reeves, and he may or may not make an appearance on this list somewhere for me further down the road. But I just think he's great. I think he sells action in a way that he's very unassuming in that respect. I don't know how to explain this. Like he's not the muscle bound 80s action star that Stallone or Schwarzenegger or Van Damme in the martial arts aspect of it. Like he's not that guy. But I think he does a really great job of selling that. I mean, the guy is 60 years old. He's going to be 61 in September. And there's not a second that you don't believe that he can kill somebody the way that he does, the way that he studies that. I mean, yeah, no, I don't think he's going to get up from half of the shit that he gets up from. And there's definitely I don't know what it's called or if there's like a name for it, but there's this thing going on in movies these days where it's just like, I guess if you get stabbed, it's okay. Like everybody
Yeah,
survives a stabbing
yeah,
these days. I mean, I rewatched Scream 6 the other day. I'm like, this is
it's
fucking
terrible.
ridiculous.
Yeah,
Everybody, I mean, I get a paper cut and I'm like, I need a Band-Aid. And these people are just taking knives through the fucking head and it's no big deal. But so there's a fair amount of suspension of disbelief that's required, but the movie's really great. As long as he's attached to it, I'll go see those movies. He sells it great. John Wick, fantastic choice.
yeah. Thank you. All right, sir. What do you got for your number 9?
All right, well, my number nine happens to be when a group of rogue military operatives seizes control of a former prison on Alcatraz Island, threatening to launch a deadly chemical attack on San Francisco. A federal agency enlists an unlikely duo, a chemical weapons specialist and a former prisoner with intimate knowledge of the island to stop the threat. As they navigate the island's traps and face the armed militants, the pair must find a way to prevent a catastrophic disaster while grappling with their own conflicting motives.
The Rock was on my top 5. It is an amazing movie. Probably my all-time favorite Nicolas Cage performance. And when you throw Sean Connery in on top of it, it's an amazing movie. Love it.
It's so good. It's 1996. It's back when I when I was in better favor with Michael Bay and a lot of the stuff that he was doing. Yeah, Ed Harris, Michael Biehn, Vanessa Marcel, who I
So
know you're a
hot.
big fan of. I wouldn't kick her out of bed for eating crackers. It made $335 million on a budget of 75 million. It was such a great movie. It was such a fun movie. Now, the last movie I named was 1990. This movie is 1996. There's going to be another 90s movie on here. There's something about the action movies, the movies generally speaking that were made between like 1990 and 1995, 96 era, Michael Bay, to his credit, was a big part of a lot of that stuff. And certainly had a ton of influence there. This movie was so fun. There's so many really great quotable moments in it. It's kind of ridiculous when you watch it, but I used to use this term when I was younger to describe something, a type of movie that I really liked, that I enjoyed to revisit often. And I would call it a feel-good movie. This is one of those feel-good movies. It's just fucking fun. It's so much fun to watch this movie and eat some popcorn. It's the definition of a popcorn movie, right? You can't really take it very seriously. It's pretty goofy from head to toe, but also like really great performances and really fun stuff that happens in this movie. So that's my number nine, The Rock from 1996.
Yeah, the only other thing that I will add, and I'm sure I did not go back and listen to episode 42, so I don't know if I told this story or I'm sure I did, but I ran across a fan theory about The Rock that Sean Connery's character, which was a Mason, I can't remember his full
Yeah,
name.
I don't know either.
Anyways, the theory though, and I actually love this theory, and I've totally bought into it, was that that character is James Bond, and he had been in prison in The Rock. And then, because if you go back and you listen to Mason describe, he was actually part of Her Majesty's Secret Service. He was part of, like that kind of thing. So I just thought that was super cool.
You are a mark for that.
Yeah,
You would absolutely
100%,
buy into that shit.
100%, 100%.
I love
So
that.
no, that's a great movie. Great pick.
All right.
Okay.
I gotta work on these plot summaries though. They're way too obvious, but they're still pretty fun. But give me your number nine, sir.
All right, my number nine is a film that I know you love. Doesn't sound like it is on your list, and that's fine. This one was actually like a theatrical kind of bomb. Had a budget of like 25 million bucks and only made 11 million dollars in the box office. It's from 1986. Was directed or written by Gary Goldman and David Weinstein, directed by none other than John Carpenter. This is Big Trouble in Little China. Um, this movie is one of those. So my list I built out based on the movies that I had seen the most, revisited the most, and enjoyed the most kind of throughout my years. And Big Trouble in Little China is one of those that I had the VHS. I had I recorded it off TV and rewatched it. I bought it. I bought it on DVD. I bought it on Blu-ray. I still probably go back and revisit it at least once a year. It's to your point, it's a feel-good movie. It's ultimately quotable. I won't say it's a great movie, but it is so enjoyable. You know, Kurt Russell, Kim Cattrall, you and I met God, what was the actor's name? In full regalia from the movie. I can't remember what the
Oh,
guy's name.
James Hong, I believe.
James Hong, yes. Again, it's probably more of a fantasy movie than it is a true action movie. But Kurt Russell, for the Jack Burton character, for my money, is one of the all time kind of my favorite characters. I just love Big Trouble in Little China. It's a great movie.
It is. It is. I mean, this is a no-brainer. I think we should legitimately do a deep dive on this movie at some point someday and just talk it through from beginning to end and all the drama that went behind making it and Carpenter trying to sell it and Fox not wanting to promote it and all of this stuff. It's such a great movie. I'll go ahead and out myself. It's not on the list. It's not a movie that it is absolutely an action movie. I do agree with that, but it's not one that I think of as an action movie. So
Yep.
it just doesn't filter through my brain as that kind of movie because and I don't even have a good reason for it. So I'll just say that because that movie is so lighthearted and it's so much fun, and I laugh more than I get adrenalized by the action. I think that's why my brain just sees it in sort of a different light. But you couldn't catch me on a day that I would ever say anything ill about that movie because it is just one of the fucking greatest movies ever. And I think it's probably Star Wars aside, it's probably the movie that you and I hold uh, so affectionately in conjunction with each other. You know, like you and
Yeah.
I both love that movie more than anybody, more than any other human being that I know that loves that movie. And I think that we both share that. So, yeah, I mean, no brainer. fantastic movie. I think about every day how much I wish there was a sequel, and then I'm glad that there's not a sequel because they would
Yeah.
ruin it. They would fuck it up. When I heard they were going to try to do that with The Rock and
With
all
The
this
Rock,
stuff,
right?
and I was
Ugh.
just like, no, you are
Yeah.
missing the entire point of everything if you cast him in that movie, unless it's a sequel and he's in the movie, but it's still Kurt Russell, right?
Yeah.
But I think we both know that if they were to ever make a sequel, and they're losing time on this very quickly, it is not going to be worth my time, and it will not even get my money if it doesn't have both John Carpenter and Kurt Russell. Those are
Yeah.
required. I mean, even Dennis Dunn can fuck off if he needs to. I would love to have him in there. I would love for him to
Right.
be in there. Jesus, James Hong's still alive. Let's get Lopan back. I mean, we could still do this. Kim Cattrall's not working a lot these days, or at least
Yeah.
not on conventional shows. So it's still possible, but and if Carpenter and Kurt Russell are not involved, I don't want anything to do with it
Yeah.
because it's that special to me that at this point I'm just ready to stop all discussion around even talking about a sequel. Like
Yeah.
let's just agree this is the greatest one-off movie ever made and
Yeah.
leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah, it's one of those movies that you're right. Every time I even hear a sniff of a sequel to it or a reboot or anything like that, I just get infinitely bummed out because I'm like, it's it's not a perfect movie, but it's a perfect movie, right? It's like leave it
Yeah.
alone, let it sit there. I'll be honest with you, even a I there's this big trend these days with these reboots and sequels and sequels that take 30 years off. I don't know that I would want to see that. I really don't.
Well,
Um,
we've talked
you
about
know,
that at great
yeah,
length. They
yeah,
haven't done it well enough. The only thing that,
yeah,
in my book, has done it well enough to justify its existence is Cobra Kai. That's it.
yeah, yeah,
Ghostbusters, Star Wars, none of those things helped to live up to the hype or improve the level of
yeah,
storytelling from what came before it. Cobra Kai did that for me, and maybe I'm in the minority there, but like I appreciated that. That's the only one. That's literally the only one. And I'm not saying everything else was bad. I'm just saying nothing else did what it
yeah,
should have done. Nothing else improved upon the original product, in my opinion.
yeah. No, I would agree with that. Um, all right, what's your next one?
All
Nine,
right,
eight.
here we go. It's not going to be another hard plot summary. I'm really going to have to tweak AI. A rookie FBI agent goes undercover to infiltrate a group of adrenaline seeking criminals suspected of committing a series of daring bank robberies. As he immerses himself in the world of extreme sports, can't imagine what that would be, and tight knit camaraderie, he finds himself torn between his duty to uphold the law and his growing bond with the charismatic leader of the group. As the stakes rise, the agent faces a critical choice that could alter his life forever.
So we already talked about Keanu Reeves. Point Break was almost on my list.
Oh, it's so good.
It's so good. I rewatched Point Break probably 6 weeks ago. I turned it. It was one of those nights where I was like, oh, I'll sit down and I'll watch TV for 20 minutes, like before bed, right? And it had just started. And I was like, fuck. Because I knew I was going to sit there the entire time. And, I sat down at 11:15 and I got up at, 2 or whatever time it was. Yeah, it's outstanding. And it holds up really well. Um, it kicked the shit out of the reboot that they tried. That reboot was awful.
Yeah.
Um, and oh, it's a great pick. And in fact, if I remember correctly, we actually talked about this on our original podcast about like it was close, I think, at the time to like both of our lists, even in the top, or at least it would have been for me. Yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
great pick.
Yeah. I mean, it's not super obvious, but I thought it was really great, directed by Catherine Bigelow, whose husband may show up on my list. You know, Keanu, you got Sway's dog, you got the national treasure that is Gary Busey, Lori Petty. It didn't really make that much money. I mean, it made 83 million on a budget of 24, but it's just like the epitome of this great, fun 90s action movie. Like this is the bread and butter of what I was just talking about with like The Rock. Now, The Rock came about 5 years later, but Point Break is kind of one of those movies that kind of helped kick all this stuff off. And yeah, I thought it was magic. I thought it was really good. Such a good combination of Keanu with Patrick Swayze, who at the time was doing different movies, right? This was his first, I don't know, maybe it was his first bad guy role, if you will. I'm not sure if he played that kind of character in any movies prior to this. If he, I didn't look that up, so I might be completely
Yeah, no, I
unprepared.
don't know. Yeah.
But I thought it was great. I love the California surf scene. I just thought that the whole um, atmosphere of everything that was set there was really great. So yeah, that's it. I mean, not much to say about 1991's Point Break, other than it was a fantastic movie. It's very rewatchable, and I might just fire it up sometime here this weekend.
Holds up, yeah, holds up really, really well. And I think part of the reason that it does is like there's no technology really in that movie, right? That's really kind of, at least for me, that's what kind of throws older movies out, is or brings me out of those movies, is when the tech is bad. But there's really no tech in that movie other than
No,
walkie talkies and stuff, right?
no, it's not
And
even
yeah,
that dated with like, it's not like they whip out these old school flip phones and you're like, oh, that looks
right.
terrible. I mean, I'm sure there are some aspects of it that are somewhat dated, but for the most part, it's about the story. It's about what's going on with the characters, and you focus on that more than anything else. So
Yeah.
it's great. All right, give me
Awesome.
your number 8.
My number eight um, is another film from mid 80s, 1985. Another one that was kind of a theatrical bomb, 14 million bucks, which again is nothing. Directed by a, at least to me, a relatively non-known guy, Guy Hamilton, um, based on a kind of a book called The Destroyer, which I've never read, but I would like to read, starring none other than Fred Ward. This is
Oh,
1985's
wow.
Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins.
Okay, before you even start, can we talk about how unfair it is that they have a movie called The Adventure Begins and then
Yes.
never fucking make a sequel?
No sequel. Yeah, so I was gonna say, so like we talked about Big Trouble. My last pick, Big Trouble in Little China, was a movie that like I hope they never make a sequel to. And then my next one was called The Adventure Begins, and I've been waiting for a sequel since 1985, which will never be made. But yeah. So again, I made my list based on movies that bring me joy, that I've rewatched, that are to use your term, are just kind of feel good movies. And Remo Williams is one of those movies. Fred Ward is not what you would consider an action star by any stretch of the imagination. Um, it is, it stars Wilford Brimley, Fred Ward, Joel Grey, like people that you just don't know, right? Or but like they're not, um, and so Remo Williams is this kind of Joe Schmo guy that gets recruited into this underground, I don't know, what do you call it, a mercenary organization? I mean, I suppose he works for the government technically, but he's trained by this little Chinese assassin, right? And he, which is played by Joel Grey, which I don't know that you could do that today. Well, I suppose you could, but
It'd be tough because Joel Grey is not Asian.
right, right. um, but again, it's like it's made in New York City. They've got an amazing scene in and around the Statue of Liberty when, if you recall, the Statue of Liberty was kind of being rebuilt, and it had girders all around it. And that scene alone is amazing. But Remo Williams learns all these kind of you know Tai Chi and martial arts, and then he kind of goes on this mission, this secret mission. And again, it's really good. It's not one of these movies that is, again, it didn't make any money in the box office. I remember I would go and rent this movie like regularly from the video store. I don't own it on Blu-ray. I'm assuming I could get it on Blu-ray, but so I actually haven't watched it recently. It's been a long time, but Remo Williams is one of my all-time favorite movies. It's my number eight.
Do you realize that Joel Grey was born 92 years ago in Cleveland, Ohio?
Was he real? I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So definitely doesn't fit. Well, it's interesting. And he's the father of Jennifer Grey, who is from Dirty Dancing and Ferris
Oh,
Bueller's
Jesus.
Day
I didn't know
Off.
that either. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty
Wow.
interesting stuff. But yes, this was a great movie. I got to be honest. I am reasonably sure the last time I saw this is when you and I were living together 30 years
Oh,
ago
is that right?
in the
Yeah.
dorms,
Okay.
or however long ago that was. Yeah, that was about 30 years ago. Um, yeah, I have not seen it anytime recently, but I remember loving this movie, and I remember watching it over and over and over as a kid. What year did it come out again? It was 85.
85. 85. Yeah.
So this was, I remember growing up and VCRs being obviously a big thing, and you could usually fit about three movies on a VCR tape. And we had cable growing up. I was one of the few families that had like HBO all the time. So at some point, I had a tape with a couple movies on it, and Remo Williams was on there, and I would watch that movie over and over and over. And I loved it. I thought it was great. And I was severely disappointed that it never got a sequel. I don't remember if you quoted the specific numbers for this, but my guess is it didn't do very well. Well, you did say, I think, on the top
Yeah,
of your introduction.
it made 14 million bucks. Like Wikipedia actually doesn't have its budget, so which is really rare that like they don't list that. But yeah, it's I mean if it only made 14 million bucks, I mean it can't have
Yeah.
made any money. Um I'm actually speaking of Wikipedia, I'm looking at it right now. It said on the casting of the white actor Joel Grey, who went through 4.5 hours of makeup every day to look like an elderly Korean. Producer Larry Spiegel claimed, "We assumed, of course, that we'd be using an Oriental actor. We couldn't find one, and then I thought of Gray. This casting was highly controversial. So even in '85, it was
Yeah.
like, hey, come on, time out, yo." Yeah,
What's crazy is that Fred Ward died 3 years ago. So,
yeah,
obviously you're not going to get your sequel, but Joel Grey's still alive. He's in his 90s and still kicking, and Fred Ward died at 80. But yeah, I mean, it's a great pick. I'm actually a little surprised this didn't end up on your greatest movies without a sequel list, because that would have been a solid
yeah,
choice for that.
for
Because
sure.
that's honestly that's the first and only thing I think of when I hear this movie come up, is that, damn, I remember really liking it, but it never had a sequel. And you
Yeah,
can't call a movie The Adventure Begins and not have a sequel. Maybe they were just really hopeful it would do better in the box office, and it very much did not.
yeah, for sure. So, all right, what do you have for your number seven?
All right, we're trucking along here. Here's my plot summary. Again, not going to be a difficult one for you to pull, but in a dystopian future where machines have risen against humanity, a relentless, nearly indestructible assassin is sent back in time to eliminate a woman whose unborn child is destined to lead a human resistance. To protect her, a soldier from the future is also sent back, resulting in a deadly chase through the present day as as the hunted woman grapples with the shocking truth of her fate. She must find the strength to survive and shape the future of mankind. In a world.
So, so it's that was good.
Was that good?
See, it's funny. It was very good. It's funny to me because I think if you and I did and we done this podcast, if we did a podcast of best sequels,
I don't
I
think
think
we've done this
T2,
one yet.
I think T2 would
Oh,
be on both of our lists.
maybe we have. I'm trying to remember. I'm not in a state to remember,
But
but
anyways, I
yes,
think T2 would probably be on both of our lists of best sequels, right?
I think we did that list and we struck like Empire Strikes Back from the record or something like that.
Maybe we did.
Yeah.
But and yeah, I can't disagree with T2. I mean T2 was, I mean
Well,
it's
hold
certainly
on. Hold
yeah.
on. This is not T2.
Oh, is it T3 or is it T1? Terminator.
Yeah,
It's
T2 was
Terminator.
on my top five list. This is
Okay, it's Terminator.
1984's
Okay,
Terminator.
sorry.
No,
Okay,
it's okay.
sorry.
I just wanted to make sure because you're obviously going in that direction.
No, I was. Okay. No, so that's interesting. It's interesting too because the plot summary is almost identical. But
Well,
um
therein lies the problem with
yeah.
how the Terminator movies unfolded after T2. Yes.
Yeah. Um, so it's funny when the original Terminator movie came out, 80 what? 84?
Yes.
I remember thinking about this movie almost as a, I don't say horror, but almost as a horror movie. Like the Terminator was a very scary character to me back then, right? Um, and um, this is one that I'll be honest with you, I probably haven't seen more than a handful of times because I think T2 is so good, and I think T2 is a superior movie to the original. Um, but the original is a really good movie, and I think it was just kind of where it hit me in my life that I didn't have more reverence for it, if that makes any sense. Still a great movie, but like just not one of my favorites. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And certainly you're not obligated to like this just because it ended up on my list. But
Yeah.
I honestly, for very, very different reasons, have trouble deciding which one of the movies I like better, T1 or T2. It really
Oh, is
depends
that
on the
right?
day. I really think this is a fantastic movie. But in order for me to do that, though, I kind of have to put myself in the shoes of somebody who has seen T1 but not T2, because T2,
Yes.
it's I think we've already kind of covered this, but probably one of the greatest sequels of all time, if not the greatest sequel of all time. But that doesn't exist without the original Terminator movie. And this movie helped set the stage for the idea of time travel, for the idea of artificial intelligence, for the idea of the ramifications of all this stuff put together, like what happens if you go back in time and you do this thing and you make this move, and what does that mean? Like, we just didn't have, nobody was asking those questions the way that I felt like James Cameron did back in 1984. And if that movie had never had a sequel, thank God that it did, but if it didn't, it would have been a fucking great movie. It would have ended up in my top five for sure. The only reason it's not my top five is because Terminator 2 actually was better. It took everything that the first movie did, and it didn't change it a lot, but it took all the stuff, and it took all the mediocre stuff and made it fantastic. The special effects, the story, the acting, everything was cranked up to 11 on this movie, on T2 specifically. But I really do have an affinity for the original movie because it kind of started the idea of all of it. And I love the score. I know that sounds really kind of cheesy, but Brad Fidel, if that's how you pronounce his last name, has this really great synthesizer heavy score. He came up with that theme, that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. And these days, it's really topical with artificial intelligence. We've already talked about AI a little bit. I mean, obviously, I've created all these plot summaries using AI. That's what this that's what this movie is all about. It's about what happens when the machines get self-aware. And I still think that's kind of a really creepy thing to explore in
Yes.
conversation is because we are way closer now than we were in 1984. So these kinds of things, while I still don't think they're going to happen in our lifetime, but I feel like they're more plausible now than they ever have been. And that makes that movie better. It makes it more effective. I think if you sat down and watched it, and again, try to take Terminator 2 out of the focus and how good of a movie that is, but just take what James Cameron was trying to do with this movie and watch it in a bubble if you can. And I think that you'll find that it's really interesting and really poignant to what's happening today in 2025. That's my thought.
No, it's funny you say that. I actually would really like to go back and revisit this movie now, to your point, through the lens of AI, through the lens of robotics that we have, those kind of things. It's funny that the Terminator franchise is an interesting one to me because it's like it's got such high highs, but it's got such low lows too. You know what I mean? Like it's really
Sure.
strange where like the first movie is great, the second movie is greater, and
Yes.
then it like and then
Never
it
never
just
gets back there.
no, not T3 I thought was enjoyable, but after that, I mean it fucking falls off a cliff hard, in my opinion. Like some of those
Yeah.
last ones are almost unwatchable.
I like the
Um,
Dark Fate. I like the very last one.
did you like that one? Okay.
I
Yeah.
liked it. It's not one
Okay.
that I would revisit a whole lot, but I
Yeah.
will say that another thing that really makes this interesting is that you put it in the scope of 1984, before cell phones, before all that stuff.
Yes.
This, to your point earlier, like this is kind of a borderline horror movie because it's a stalker movie, really.
Yeah.
It's or a slasher almost, in that Linda Hamilton is this character, and somebody's going through the phone book and killing everybody with her name.
Yeah.
And that's terrifying in a day where there is no internet, there is no cell phones, there is no way to get a hold of people. Like that kind of shit is really creepy. If you can, people like you and I could put ourselves in those shoes because
Yeah.
we had it.
Our
We
kids probably couldn't.
remember,
Yeah.
yeah, we remember a life before all that technology existed. But, a lot of obviously children couldn't. So I think it resonates a little bit more with us and our generation in a way that maybe it won't ever again for future
Yeah.
generations. And I don't know. I really appreciate that about this movie. Plus, it had boobs. Terminator 2 didn't have boobs. So, you
That's
know
true.
what? This
That's
that it gets thumbs up for
it's on
boobs.
the there you go. So I'm looking back through previous podcast episodes. We've actually never done a favorite sequels episode.
We
We've also
haven't?
never done no, we've also never done so in episode 38,
Hmm.
we did favorite movies without sequels. In episode 95, which was just recently, we did top 5 disappointing sequels. But we never did favorite sequels.
Okay.
And I'm looking through our list of podcast topics. We also never did sequels better than the original. I think both of those
Ooh,
podcasts would be really interesting.
that would be
Favorite
hard.
se- favorite sequels and
Yeah.
sequels better than the original. Better than
Yeah.
the original, there's not many, but I think both of those would be interesting topics. So we
Yeah.
can put a pin in those. So
Okay. Okay. We'd have to eliminate Terminator from that conversation because obviously,
yes,
and Empire Strikes Back probably.
that would be the two, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Maybe Godfather. But that's here or there. Let's not get ahead of ourselves though.
Right,
Before we get there, give me
right.
your number 7, sir.
So my number 7 could have very easily been my number 6. This was really just kind of which movie I watched more, really. Um, my number 7 is a movie that I know we have talked about. I know it's a movie that you hold in very high regard as well. Um, it is by far and away the most box office successful movie on my list. It had a budget of $48 million and made $474 million. It is 1989's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Excellent
Um,
fucking
I
choice.
I love this movie. Ironically enough, I'm going, and again, I didn't go back and listen to the podcast where we did this top 5. I'm pretty sure I put Raiders in my top 5,
You did,
which
I
I don't,
think.
yeah, which is like in retrospect. And again, I'd have to go back and listen to it because I prefer Last Crusade to Raiders. Now maybe I did that because Raiders is a little bit more of a kind of a swashbuckling, like, I don't know. I think this is a better film than Raiders. But Last Crusade is a movie that 100% holds up. It's a period piece, right? So you don't have to worry about the technology and cell phones and this, that, and the other thing. It is the last great, in my opinion, Indiana Jones movie. It's the greatest movie of the franchise. It kicks the shit out of number 4. Number 5, I didn't even fucking finish because it was so terrible. This is again Sean Connery, Harrison Ford. You're going after the holy grail, right? It's like it is the tippy top of the best thing you could ever go look for,
Yep.
right? I mean, like,
They
you know,
screwed
uh,
themselves by
they
doing
did.
that.
No, they
They
did.
really
They did.
did.
Um, and I have a feeling that, and I haven't gone and done the research, but I'm guessing they thought this was going to be the
Yeah.
last Indiana Jones film.
That would
Right?
be
And
my
so they're like,
guess
okay,
too.
well, we'll just blow our load. And yeah, we'll just, we'll go get the thing, right? Because again, everything since then has really paled in comparison. I mean, the fourth one was some skull, and the fifth one, some math thing, some like compass or something. Anyways,
I
again,
love your plot
I
summaries, by
didn't
the
get
way.
to
They're
the.
awesome.
But no, I mean, this is Harrison. I mean, Harrison Ford. You know, if he's not Han Solo, he's Indiana Jones. Um, and Henry Jones is one of the most iconic characters of all time, and in my opinion, this is the best adventure that he was ever on. I just absolutely love this film.
This is one of the, there are not a lot of memories in my youth of going to movies. Like, I know I went to movies a lot, but like this one was extra special to me because it came out Memorial Day 1989. And that was right next to my birthday. So my parents took me to see this for my birthday. And yeah, everything that you're saying, I completely agree with. This was the pinnacle. Like, they should have left this at a trilogy, if you could even call it a trilogy, because it's kind of not really, because the second movie took place before the first and all this stuff.
Yeah,
But it is the most enjoyable out of all the movies. The score is one of the greatest John Williams scores that has ever existed from front to back. You can listen to that score and you can watch the movie in your head, and that's the biggest compliment I could pay to a composer. I think that that's really admirable that he could pull that off. But the movie is just so much fun. I mean, again, feel good. It's Sean Connery is great. Harrison Ford, I think, reached sort of, that was his pinnacle of being an action star. I think in 1989, you know, at that place where he was. I mean, I think he pulled off the other stuff the best that he could, but this was the last time that I bought him legitimately as an action star.
yeah.
And gosh, that movie, just top to bottom, it's so much fun. It's so good. Raiders is great. Raiders may be a better movie, but Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is just more fun. It's the most fun you could have in a movie. And I love it. I think it's fantastic, and I'm glad it ended up on your list. It was my honorable mention, but I did end up bumping it actually for a movie
Okay,
that I think I don't even think it's hard to even call it an action movie, but we'll get there. But
okay,
that was my honorable mention. So we almost had an overlap, but at this point, I'm very convinced we're not going to have any overlaps.
okay. The only other thing that I'll actually, it's a question for you. Um, Harrison Ford is like a notoriously grumpy actor, right? And especially as he gets older, he's grumpier. Now at this point, he's like he's selling out. He's doing Scotch ads and all sorts of stuff, which is fine, good for him. Do you think he ever enjoyed playing a character? Like my perception is he enjoyed playing Indiana Jones more than like Han Solo, as an example. Like, and again, we'll never know, but like this is the one role that to me he looks like he's enjoying playing.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'm okay.
No, I do think, well, I mean, short of, I mean, if you take out, I got to think about this for a second, but if you take out Star Wars and Indiana Jones, did he play any other characters that carried on through multiple movies?
The only other one might be he played Jack Ryan, I think, twice in two Tom Clancy movies. I
Oh, yeah, that's
think.
right. It was Clear and Present Danger and Patriot Games, right?
I think. Yeah, I believe so.
Which I don't know if that's even on his radar anymore. But yeah, to your point, I think that he very much enjoyed Indiana Jones. I don't know if he enjoyed all of them, but I think there was a
Right.
period of time where
Neither did we.
he did. Yeah, yeah, fair. Also, fair point. He did enjoy Indiana Jones. I don't know that he enjoyed Star Wars as much. I think he appreciated what it allowed him, what it gave him, which was
Money.
a lot of money and a lot of stardom and opportunities and open doors into other projects and other things. But I think Indiana Jones, there's a reason why I think he made five of those movies. And
Yeah.
I mean, I guess technically he made four Star Wars movies, but um, I think that's something that's been near and dear to his heart. So yeah, that's how I would
All right.
uh, spec that out.
All right. So we have arrived, sir, at your number six,
All right, my
which
number
is the
six is
yeah.
the one that you may not get from the plot summary. You
Okay.
probably will, you might. There's a couple keywords in here, But if you haven't seen this movie in a while, you might not, and you're probably going to be genuinely surprised by this. So here we go.
Okay.
In this action-packed film, a highly skilled operative is pulled back into the field to rescue a former trainee kidnapped by a ruthless arms dealer. The mission quickly becomes personal as the operative faces intense challenges, includes a powerful, mysterious weapon known as the Rabbit's Foot. With stakes higher than ever, the operative must navigate betrayal, deception, and danger to complete the mission and protect those that he cares about. Now, do
Wow.
you have, I'm sure you have a hint, but
I mean, the key word is rabbit's foot, but
correct.
I cannot place that. I would say,
The rabbit's foot is a 100% complete MacGuffin in this story. We never even find out what the rabbit's foot is or what it
oh,
does.
I was gonna say, like, is that the name of the there was a movie that Schwarzenegger played in with Vanessa Williams, where and Tom Arnold was in it. Fuck, what was that called? It was a good movie.
Not True
But I don't.
Lies.
No. Um, Eraser. And I was gonna say,
Oh,
was the rabbit's foot the name of that rail gun? But no, I if it's not that, I don't know. I have
no.
no idea.
This one is going to be really obscure for you, but
Okay.
I feel like from an action movie perspective, this movie deserves to be on this list. It's Mission Impossible 3, which
Oh,
is
okay.
I
I've never
I
seen it.
totally
Yeah.
obscure. Oh, you've never seen it at all?
No, I don't think
Oh,
I think I might have seen the first one. You bust my balls about Mission Impossible all the
I
time.
do
Yeah, I
bust
don't
your
think I.
balls about that
Yeah.
because they are genuinely fantastic action movies. Like you can say what you want about Tom Cruise and all his weird Scientology magic underwear
Yeah.
bullshit, but I'm telling you right now, those movies are fantastic. The second
Is this the
one,
one with Philip Seymour Hoffman?
yes, which is
Okay.
why it was on my list
Okay.
because I hold Philip Seymour Hoffman in the highest regards. Al Pacino is my favorite actor and will always be my favorite actor. Philip Seymour Hoffman may be legitimately the best actor I've ever seen and my second favorite overall. And he played an amazingly terrifying character in this movie. And I loved it. I thought it was great. Directed by J.J. Abrams, who you may have heard of before. Tom Cruise, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Michelle Monaghan, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg. Just under $400 million worldwide with a budget of 150. The movie does introduce Simon Pegg and Michelle Monaghan, who will become regulars in future movies. But I thought this movie was really great. So Mission Impossible 1 was a really solid movie, a really fun Tom Cruise vehicle, if you will. And at that point in time, I felt like he was kind of searching for his next thing. Like, what was the next thing he was going to launch into? Because he was doing individual movies, but um, didn't really have that character or that franchise. He wasn't really in a franchise at that point. Obviously, Top Gun 2 wouldn't be made for a very long time.
Yep.
And that movie was really good. The second one, I don't know. Like I rewatched it, I thought it was okay, but it was super disappointing. Like I just didn't get it. I didn't like it. And then this third one came out, and it was fantastic. And it sort of set the bar for the movies that were to come. So three kind of ties into four, kind of ties into five, and so forth. You have a lot more continuity, I guess is the right way to say it, between this third movie and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth and so forth. And so I just think it's great. I think it's really fun. It's really worth rewatching. I'm gonna go ahead and say I think Tom Cruise does a fantastic job in this movie. He's a weird dude, but man, he's a good actor when it comes to some of these action movies. He really sells the intensity, and he does so in a really fantastic way in this movie. So, yeah, I think Mission Impossible 3 is when the series started to write itself. One was good, two kind of started to fall off. Three is when we're like, okay, J.J. Abrams gets in and introduces the mystery box thing, right? J.J. Abrams is kind of known for doing that. He does the mystery box thing where the plot of the movie is centered towards this thing, and we never quite get to the thing, but it doesn't matter because the ride to get to the thing is really all that matters, and that's what he's focused on. We saw that a little bit in The Force Awakens, right? Like the whole thing
Hmm.
was Luke Skywalker was the MacGuffin in The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And we got to him at the end, and then poof, everything goes away.
Yeah.
So, like, none of that paid off. Lost. J.J. Abrams was obviously a big, a contributor to everything in Lost, and it was the same kind of thing. It's like it's the discussion and the conversation around the mystery, and there's the rabbit's foot thing is a really good case study in storytelling when it comes to this because we never find out what the hell that even is. We just know that that's what Tom Cruise is. I mean, it's the very definition of MacGuffin as we know it in film vernacular. And he does a great job with it. So I love this movie. I thought it was really good. It led the way. We're going to get our last Mission Impossible movie this year in 2025, and it's going to be sad, but it's also going to be really cool. Started all the crazy stunts that have happened, and I thought it was fantastic. Do yourself a favor, get Paramount Plus for like a month, get the free trial or whatever, and watch
Yeah.
all the Mission Impossible movies. That's where you're going to find them is on Paramount Plus. They're really good. They are worth your time. There are a lot
Okay.
of really great actors in them, and it's fun.
Yeah. I will be honest with you. I don't give Tom Cruise movies the uh, the shake they deserve, the attention they deserve,
Right?
because of my feelings about Tom Cruise.
Sure.
And again, I don't know Tom Cruise. I don't know, like, I don't, whatever, but it's like, yeah, so I'll just leave it at that. Like it's not a statement about Scientology or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it's like I see it. I see Tom Cruise on a marquee or on the list, and I'm like, whatever. It's a time, and I shouldn't, and I recognize that. Like objectively, I get that. But that is a blind spot in my kind of movie viewing.
Yeah.
And I recognize it. I need to rectify it for sure.
That's totally fair. And
Yeah,
I have that problem too. But I think if you appreciate filmmaking and you
yeah,
appreciate storytelling and all, and you appreciate the stunt coordination and all of that stuff,
yeah.
if you can try to watch these movies and try to separate your feelings of
Hmm.
um, how you feel about somebody based purely on what the media has told you to feel about this person. I'm not saying he's not actually genuinely batshit crazy. He most certainly probably is, but also like we're only
It's a great actor.
we're only
Yeah,
well, yeah, he is a great actor, and we're only feeding ourselves with all the junk that we hear on the internet. So
yes,
we don't have to like him as a person. We only have to appreciate what he brings to the movie theater screen. And nobody, I mean, I'm sorry, I'll go ahead and say it. I don't think Harrison Ford brings to the movie screen what Tom Cruise does in some of these cases. So I think it's worth if you can separate that, try these movies again. They're really fun. They're really good. Like they're good, smart action movies. And I know that you appreciate that. I know you like all the Bond movies. Um, I think you would definitely appreciate this if you could give it another shot. It's
all right,
tough, but give it, try.
that's fair. That's fair. Okay, so I have arrived at my number six,
Yes. Number
my
six.
tippy top, the tippy top.
Tippy top.
So this is, let me take a look here. Indiana Jones made 470. Okay, so this was by all accounts huge theatrical success. Budget of $15 million, box office of over $160 million. This is a 1982 film. Um, I think this is probably the best. Yeah, certainly. This is the best film in my list
If
by
this is
far.
Megaforce, I'm gonna fucking
Nope.
walk away.
Nope, it's not. It's not. No, it's not Megaforce. No, no,
I'm waiting
Megaforce
for
didn't
that.
make.
I'm waiting for
No,
Megaforce to pop up on this list.
Megaforce will show up, but it's not on this list. No. So no, this is not. And again, I did my list based on kind of how often I watched the films growing up, rewatchability, those kind of things.
Yeah.
This is 1982's First Blood with Sylvester Stallone.
Wow. Okay.
This to me is the epitome of an action film. It's a better film than like the Delta Forces of the Chuck Norris films, right?
Those were
This is
ripoffs
they were
First Blood. Yeah.
Mission Impossible and or not a mission oh shit, what were the other Chuck Norris films? Missing
Braddock,
in action,
missing in
missing in
action. Yeah,
action.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, this is a legit story based on a novel about a Vietnam vet that came back and then was put, First Blood um, was a legit. Um, again, it's a good film. There's heart to this movie. It's got Brian Dennehy, Sylvester Stallone. First Blood Part 2 was almost on this list as well. First Blood to me is a better film. It tells an actual story of a Vietnam vet and what he went through coming back and all the bullshit that they had to go through and those kind of things. There's an amazing sequence in this film where he goes out and he booby traps and he doesn't kill the cops that are after him, but he basically shows them, hey, I can take you at any time. I'm a guerrilla warfare expert. There's a scene where Colonel Trotman comes and basically kind of introduces himself and introduces what a badass that Rambo actually is. Um, First Blood Part 2 is probably more of what I would consider a traditional action movie. This is, I think, a better film. So I could argue that I probably should have put First Blood Part 2 on here. But First Blood is I love this movie. And it's, even though it is a quote unquote period piece because it's set in the 80s, I think it's really rewatchable. I don't know that like our kids would certainly not appreciate this at all. But I just think this is a great movie.
Jesus Christ, are we at that point where we have to say 80s movies are period pieces?
Well, they are, right? That's
Are
40
we
some
that?
years ago.
Yeah, yeah, okay, that's fair. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and out myself, and you're probably gonna not want to be my friend anymore, but I have not seen this movie.
Really?
I have
Okay,
not
no, that's fine.
seen First Blood. I have actually not seen Rambo First Blood Part 2. I have
Really?
seen the
Okay.
third one, and I believe I saw the fourth one. Don't think I saw the fifth one, but these movies, I don't know. For my money, I've never been interested in war movies. Those
Okay.
have never appealed to me in any level. Um, I'm sure it's great. I'm sure it's super fun. Well, maybe it's not super fun, but
No, it's
I'm sure that was the wrong choice of words. But yeah, I haven't seen it. I probably should revisit these movies to, just have that in my vocabulary and be able to talk to them. But no, I haven't seen them. I played video games. I certainly,
yeah.
as a child growing up in the 80s, I was very, very aware of the Rambo culture.
Hmm.
And, there was a lot of, talk around it, and they were huge movies. I felt like they were maybe never quite as huge or as popular as some of the Schwarzenegger ones. And obviously Schwarzenegger
Hmm.
and Stallone were quote unquote rivals, right? They were
Yeah.
both sort of action stars of the same ilk, if you will. So I was maybe more of a Schwarzenegger guy than a Stallone guy, but
Okay.
yeah. So I haven't seen this. I can't really comment intelligently on anything that you've said.
The best way I can describe this, and I think you'll understand this analogy. So, and ironically enough, it's Stallone as well. First Blood is to the rest of the Rambo films what Rocky is to the rest of the Rocky films, if that makes sense. Like this first film is the film, right, to the
Right.
rest of the movies.
It's
Does
it's
that
the
make
art. It's
it's the
the
yes.
yes, yeah. It's the
Yeah,
state. It's the thing that gets the other movies made, and then they get too
exactly.
commercial and they get too big
Yes.
budgeted, and all of a sudden we have, you know, things happening in space or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. So yes. So this one is the one where there is a true um, story to it, and
Yeah,
you're you're under and you're living the story of the returning Vietnam vet. There is sadness. There is you have empathy for this character. You're like those kind of things. Starting with Rambo First Blood Part 2, that's really where it kind of starts to shift into a more of a that's more of the missing in action like Braddock type film, because he actually in
yeah,
that film he goes back to Vietnam, and then once you get to like Rambo Part 4 and 5, those movies are I enjoy those movies. They are ultra violent. I mean, ultra. I mean, like the last movie, the guy like Rambo literally rips the guy's heart out of his the beating heart out of his chest. It's like very Molaram esque, right?
yeah,
Um, but and so there's very little. I mean, you really have to look for the connections between the Rambo character in the fifth movie back to this one. Um, Stallone, to his credit, I think tries to do a good job of connecting and really kind of being that character through all of those movies. What I will say, in the author of the original Rambo book hates what Stallone has done to this character in the movies. Like he
yeah,
is not a fan at all,
yeah.
other than this first movie. So, yeah, this if you've never seen this one, it's yeah, again, it's a period piece. It's pretty heavy viewing. I mean, it is by far the heaviest movie on my list. It is more on the ilk of, Apocalypse Now, like
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of thing versus a John Wick popcorn movie, turn your
Right.
brain off, The Rock, that kind of thing.
80s action. It's
Yeah.
sort of this is Alien versus James
Yeah.
Cameron's
Yes.
Aliens, which
Yes.
is a much different kind of, like the first Alien movie was really more of a horror suspense
Horror
movie,
movie. Yeah. Hmm.
whereas the second one was definitely action, 80s
Yeah.
action. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
That's
all
a
right,
great
you
pick.
got yeah, thank you. Thank you. This was a fun list. Do you have you got an honorable mention,
I
one or
do, and
two?
I'm going to go ahead and say that despite all the very obvious plot summaries I've given so far, I will actually be a little surprised and very impressed if you get this one because I think this one's
Okay.
going to be more obscure and less tied to giant blockbuster budget movies.
Okay.
A seasoned detective becomes obsessed with capturing a meticulous and disciplined career criminal, leading a group of skilled thieves in a series of high stakes heists. As both men navigate the demands of their respective worlds, balancing personal relationships and professional responsibilities, their mutual respect creates a tense, intricate game of cat and mouse. As the stakes escalate, their inevitable confrontation tests their limits and forces them to confront the costs of their chosen paths.
That Heat?
Yes. Oh wow,
Is
that's
it?
great. What a great fucking pull. Nice job. I mean there was no like
No, no,
you know
that was tough. Yeah.
Terminator had a couple of what was it? There was a couple words in there that I was like, oh God, you're totally gonna get that. Like human resistance and
Yeah.
fate and that kind of stuff. Like I knew you would get that. But yeah, wow, that's really good. I'm impressed. This one was a tough one for me because I don't consider Heat 100% an action movie. That is as much drama as it is action. But the action in that movie is so fucking intense. It is so good that it earns its way back into an action uh, top five list, in my opinion, for consideration for something like that. Because think about the action scenes in those movies. Like they
Oh
were
yeah.
so raw, they were so real. And there's been a lot said about what Michael Mann did with some of those scenes. And you watch those, and I'm almost positive I saw that movie in the theaters, and that shit was jarring to see them with those ARs in the streets, and they were shooting, and everything was just like really loud and in your face. And I thought that they did so good with that action in that movie. But to be fair, front to back, that movie is not about action. Or it's about the topic of action, but it's not an action focused
It's a
movie.
relationship movie. Yeah.
It's the parallel between Al Pacino's character and Robert De Niro's character and what they're going through on either sides and how their worlds connect and how they have this meeting and realize that, you know, one of the two of them is not going to make it through the rest of this story. And it's fantastic and so phenomenal. And yeah, again, probably it might be a little bit of a cheat, not a super action movie, but also the action that is in this movie is better than action I've seen in probably any other movie.
Yeah.
Like those few scenes with that shootout towards the end is absolutely insane. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mentioned, when we were talking about John Wick, I mentioned the kind of tactical training
Hmm.
that Keanu Reeves went through. Um, and I think it's pretty well known. Like Michael Mann put, Val Kilmer and Pacino and De Niro, like, and the rest of that crew through a bunch of tactical training
Yeah.
for those scenes. And like the reason that they sound so loud and so good is because like they're using like legit, you know what I mean? Like they're using not live rounds, obviously, but they're using legit weapons. They've gone through tactical
Yeah.
training. In fact, not too terribly long ago, I ran across a blog post that was talking about, the top 10 or top five real, realistic movie shootouts. And this was always, it's always like in the top one or two, just in terms of like how real that actual shootout is. This one to me, Heat, I always think about, I love the Val Kilmer character in that movie. And
Hmm.
this one to me is always about, it's about the scene between De Niro and Pacino, right? It's like that's, with the exception of The Godfather, this was touted as, hey, this is the first time these guys are on the screen at the same time.
Yeah.
And even in The Godfather, they weren't. They were in the same film, but they weren't on the same screen.
Right.
So and I remember there was like this urban legend of, oh, they weren't on the same set. It was all mirrors and blah blah
Yeah,
blah. But
I
like,
remember that too,
yeah,
but that's all
yeah,
bullshit. Like they were
right.
there.
They were
But
there. Yeah,
they were not face to face on screen at
on
the
the same
same
screen.
time
Yeah,
because the way they shot that scene in the diner was like a camera behind
yeah,
Al and a camera behind De Niro, and they just kind of kept going back and forth
yeah.
and cutting, and it was, oh God, it was brilliant the way that they did
Yeah.
that.
No, that's a great pick for sure. I haven't watched Heat in a long time, and and you're right. It's not one of those, like, it's not like a Point Break where you can kind of turn around in the middle and just kind of watch it. You know what I mean? Like
I
you
mean,
kind of got to invest in it. I mean, you
you
can,
can,
but
but you're gonna get so much more out of that
yeah,
experience if you start it from the beginning and watch
right.
it all the way through. And
Yeah.
it's an investment. You really have to kind of stick with it. But yeah, I mean, that's just another one of those movies in the mid 90s that I felt like really helped define that genre of filmmaking. And it was so
Yeah.
good. So good. All right.
So
Tell me yours. Tell
I
me
have
your honorable
I
mention.
so I have two. I've got a dishonorable mention and I've got an honorable mention.
A
Um,
dishonorable
I
mention.
do.
Oh,
My
wow.
well, my dishonorable mention you mentioned already. It's 1982's Megaforce, and what I will say, and what I will say
I fucking knew it.
about right, what I will say, in all honesty, Megaforce is, and I know that you like to crack on me, but like Megaforce is one of those flicks that like from purely from an action standpoint, like that is a true action movie, right? It's like a true stupid turn your brain off. It's like the
Yeah.
precursor to GI Joe and Mask and this, that, and the other thing. It's the it's silly. Again, the last scene of that movie is a guy on a fucking, it's Barry Bostwick on a flying motorcycle with the worst green screen you'll ever see. But but right, but it's like this is the movie that I was emulating on my big wheel, right? When I was, 10 years old,
Yeah.
8 years old, whatever, however old I was, actually younger than that. So again, I fully recognize it's not a great movie. It's not a good movie. It's a terrible movie. It won 1,000 Razzie Awards, but it's one of those that's like near and dear to my heart. Um, and I think I tried to make you watch that movie once and you were like, what the
Yeah.
fuck is this? It was
I
terrible.
I
Yeah.
think I might have seen some of it, but I think
Yeah.
I don't rip on you for it. The
Yeah.
reason I bring it up is because legitimately, you're the only human being that I know who has ever heard of that movie. Like
And I
I
love
know that
it.
I like some
Yeah.
obscure movies and stuff, but like not a
Yeah.
single human being that I've ever met aside from you has mentioned the words Megaforce. And I just think that there's something very endearing about that.
Yeah. Okay. And then my legit honorable mention is, and we've talked a lot about Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and like in my mind, those are the two biggest action stars, certainly of the 80s,
Sure.
arguably of all time. And my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie is Commando.
Oh,
That to me is the epitome of, there's the scene in there where it's the getting ready for battle scene, right, where he's putting on the face paint and he's putting the knives and the this and the guns and the this, that, and the other. Rambo First Blood Part 2 has one of those scenes in it as well. This is Arnold in peak Arnold, right? Just muscles on top of muscles. It's got a super young Alyssa Milano in there playing his daughter. A ton of terrible one-liners.
yeah, it's bad.
I mean,
Yeah.
just awful. This to me, it was always, ironically enough, his name is Matrix, John Matrix. John Matrix and Rambo were the two kind of big action stars. And I always preferred Commando to Rambo. Again, Rambo is a better film, but I love the Commando film.
Yeah. I remember watching that and thinking it was really fun.
Yeah,
That was the movie that sort of taught me the importance of continuity in film scenes, because
there
there's
is
that
none.
scene
The Porsche.
where the Porsche, right? He rolls the Porsche. He rolls it over and over and over, and it is fucked beyond all repair. And somehow he drives it away without a scratch on it. And I just remember thinking about that. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. That movie taught me about continuity, but
Yeah,
I liked it. I also grew up watching that movie, so I have nothing bad to say about it.
yeah.
I will
So
say though, like, don't shit on Megaforce. Or, I know you're not shitting on Megaforce, but don't. I don't believe in guilty pleasures. So like,
yeah,
don't hang your head with that. Like, if you like it, and it's awesome. And I
yeah,
believe me, I like a lot of things that many people think are
yeah.
shitty, whether it be our power ballads or movies or whatever the case may be. So
Yeah, so as we're so that was a really really fun list. I enjoyed the
yes,
hell out of
that was
that
awesome.
podcast for sure. So I'm looking at our shared note of podcast topics. We've got some really good podcast topics for this podcast, which is no longer going to include professional wrestling.
Right. Yes.
There's some really good stuff. Like just reading through this, right? Like we've got, and I even added a couple. Tonight I added deep dive, Big Trouble in Little China, favorite actors, favorite actresses, right?
Hmm.
We've got stuff like I think this one would be really fun. The greatest hits albums. I think that would be really fun
I saw that earlier.
because yeah,
Yeah.
um, again, we mentioned we've never done favorite sequels. We've never done sequels without better than the original. Like there's like 25 or 30 really good topics on here that aren't wrestlers or wrestling that I think would be really fun. So this is episode 98.
We got to
We got
make
two
it big.
we got two more,
Yep.
right? We got two more. And then I would imagine we will probably intersperse this with the wrestling podcast, maybe every other or something like that would be
Yeah.
my guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about it, but
We'll figure it out for sure.
yeah. So, well, hey, I'm pumped to see you next week. That'll be fun. We probably
Amazing.
won't record. We'll probably be too busy drinking, if I'm being honest. But
Sure.
I'm looking forward to it. It's always good to see you face to face.
I can't wait, man. It's going to be so exciting.
So, all right. That being said, that's Mr. Pip. I'm Chewie. This has been the 411 from Horror 6. Aloha.
Adios.